Today, let's talk about the INFJ functions. There have been many comments on this topic because I have talked about the functions in the latest videos that I've done. And today I really want to go into detail. I want to explain to you what the functions are. So if you're new to MBTI, if you're new to my channel, this might really help you to get an overview. If you've been with us for a while, this can be a great fresh up. And the truth is, I've been doing this for 10 years. So although I, started with the functions and this has been the basis of everything that I do, I haven't really touched up on them because there was just so much more stuff I wanted to talk about. But it's been 10 years and I've learned a lot and I see things differently. So today isn't only going to be an overview of what the functions are, but of course there's going to be some personal bias in them, how I interpret them, how I use the functions. And hopefully that will give you a lot of insight into your personal growth and also a little bit more insight when it comes to my videos. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you want to take to the next level, if you want to start living your INFJ epic life, if you say now is the time, it's not just going to stay in my mind, I'm going to make it happen, then get the free poster on the formula to an INFJ epic life. And if you want to go deeper, get the INFJ Epic Life audio guide. So this is a DIY course that you can do wherever you're at, and it will help you to understand the strategies that work for INFJ. So this isn't just about theory, it's actually using all the knowledge that I have gathered throughout the last 10 years to help you tap into your potential and create the life you always dreamed of. Everything you need to know you can find in the links in the description. The 4 functions for an INFJ from an MBTI standpoint are the following. So you have Introverted Intuition, Extraverted Feeling, Introverted Thinking, and then Extraverted Sensing. Let's start off with the first function, Introverted Intuition. There was a comment on one of my latest videos and somebody said, okay, what does this mean? I said our vision is our superpower. When I'm talking about vision, it's all about our first function. So introverted intuition is all about an ideal version of how life could be. And this isn't just an ideal world for us, this could be an ideal world for others. So there's always an idealism aspect to it. How could everything be in full harmony? How could everything be holistically peaceful and joyful and just better than what reality currently is? So this is a function that has a lot to do with a future outcome, a possible future outcome. It works in a way of pattern recognition. It works through a bird's eye view. It works a lot with archetypes. So the first function in our case is a perceiving function. So if you look at the letters INFJ, from an MBTI standpoint, we are judgers, but we're judgers because our first extroverted function is a judging function. But if you look deeper, our first function, the thing that we identify with the most, is a perceiving function. So first off, we perceive the world in a very unique way. And for INFJs, it's rather hard to distinguish between what is in our mind and what is reality, like to this day. And you have to think about it. I'm somebody who's working this, who's living this, who's researching this. That's all that I do in my free time. That's what I love to do. And still, I have to remind myself constantly, well, that's an ideal version of how things could be. That's not how it currently is. And that's what our first function is all about. So this first function also has a lot to do with willpower. And at first sight, it might not be obvious because willpower very often is associated with extroverted sensing. And it's all about, I have drive to achieve something in the real world. But the willpower of the first function is based on the fact that this ideal version that I have in my mind currently is so real to me that I'm not going to give it up. That's a part of me that's not up for debate. And this is, on the one hand, our superpower. That's what I always say. Our vision is our superpower, because if we see it and we know it's possible, we're not letting go of it. And we can withstand all kinds of problems that are coming into our life, all kinds of people who don't believe in it, and we don't even need to consciously think about it. It's who we are. But of course, there are downsides to that function. First off, our first function has the archetypical energy of a hero, right? That's how John Beebe describes every one of those functions. So this isn't about introvert intuition is generally the hero function. It's more so every first function of whatever personality type that is considered your hero function because that's what we associate it with. So in many cases, this is our superpower, and we believe this is the one thing that we can achieve everything with. And that is, of course, something that we have to be very careful with because it's just not true. You can't get everything done in life with your first function, although we believe it. And so every personality type has like this love affair with their first function. On the one hand, yes, it is the one that we have the biggest talents in, but we still need to develop it because otherwise we're using it in situations that aren't really beneficial. So for example, you really want to be with another person, but in order to do that, you have to give up who you are, or they're not willing or able to meet you where you're at because of their personal, troubles in their mind. And so our intuition might, tell us, okay, this could be this ideal relationship, but if we continuously only rely on that function, we're not going to get the result that we want. And so there's always a superiority complex connected with our first function. Again, this is for every personality type, but in our example, there is a superiority complex when it comes to our first function, meaning we believe we can do everything we want with that first function. The reason why we don't always get what we want is, based on other factors, but everything we believe we could handle with our first function, or most things. And it's important to understand that we're not complete. We're not just our first function. Because if that was the case, we could just lay back and we could just perceive life. I used to be like this when I was younger, that I was just hoping, there's somebody who, is taking care of the real world, and all I have to do is just lay back and enjoy the ride. And this sounds great in theory. It's an ideal, image that we could daydream all day long. But it's just not reality because we still need progress in our life. We still need to grow. This is one of the attributes of INFJs, by the way, the thing that we always need to grow somehow. We always need to see what is the next step? What is the next step I can take? And if we give, control over everything else outside of our intuition and we only perceive, we're also going to perceive things that don't make us feel good. We're going to perceive energy that doesn't allow us to, grow in the way that we want to grow. So those are the downsides of it. And we have to be aware that most people don't understand this function. This is a very complex function. It's a function that, is not visible. And so it is very often misunderstood. And that's why we as INFJs feel misunderstood so often, is because we know how things could develop. We know how things would turn out because we can work with probabilities. We can work with, just experiences of how, things are working out, or we know why a person acts the way they want to act because there's so many patterns that come together that allow us to pick so much information up so we can make a very precise judgment about a situation in many cases. But that judgment, of course, comes from another function that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But the first one is just being able to perceive things, to perceive emotions, to perceive patterns, to perceive visions, and to look at a situation without any judgment at first sight, perceiving everything that could be and the universal truth that is connecting us all. Our second function is extroverted feeling, and extroverted feeling is all about ethics, meaning it's a language that people connect with. It's, the thing that is currently accepted as this is good behavior and this is bad behavior. This is not about the individual's understanding of what is good and bad. This is really about what does the group feel about a certain thing. So if you see a cute puppy, this is, something that is associated with, we're now in a cute and friendly environment and all of that. Although there are probably people who would see a puppy and they're probably rather thinking of, okay, that reminds me of, Scotland, because that's where I saw that dog, 5 years ago, right? So ethics is all about, the external feeling. And for INFJs, this very often is associated with creating harmony. And it doesn't have to be harmony. What it means is we understand harmony on an emotional level. we can pick it up. We can pick up when something is out of harmony. We can pick up when somebody is not, coming from a peaceful state, when something is disrupting the external harmony. So one of the examples I gave in one of my last videos was, if you have two people and both are suffering, the INFJ who isn't really conscious of a lot of things going on, maybe when we're younger, we're probably going to be more leaned on the person who voices, I don't feel good, please help me, than the other one who's keeping that pain inside. Both are suffering, but we're just more easily aware of the one who's showing that emotion one way or another. So, but the misconception here is that we very often think we have to be reactive to a current state. So we get into a group and there's an emotional atmosphere. And we try to sort of not disturb that. We try to stay back and sort of like maintain the harmony that is already created. But this gets us into a lot of trouble because at first sight, it's the best thing to do, because if you don't do anything wrong, people cannot dislike you. You're not the one who's going to cause this harmony. But what we have to understand is that the moment you enter a group, it's not just a group of, let's say, 4, now it's a group of 5. And you by default are part of that group. So you do have the power and you do have the right to create the emotional atmosphere, to put your flavor into it, because that's actually what makes it holistic. You exist within the realm of whoever you come into contact with. And that is something that a lot of INFJs shy away from. It's something that I learned rather late, because I thought if I would really express what I believe through emotions, people would see that underneath all of that is introverted intuition. And that is weird. People are not going to get it. They're going to be triggered by it. They're going to be, taken back. And yes, this is a reaction very often when people don't know you. Like, it takes them a while to understand, okay, that's how you meant it. And you do have good intentions. And this is just who you are. And for us, it's super important to not look at first sight how people are going to react to that emotion, but to also use it in a way of, I'm creating an emotion in order to maintain and continuously add my flavor to the mix so I feel good. Because if I don't feel good, that I'm going to be depleted. And I can't use all of my power and all of my will, we talked about that in the first function, to keep my head above water. I actually have to go the other direction, which is I have to get into a position of thriving, which allows me to, go after my purpose, live in accordance to my values. And we're going to, believe it or not, actually have way less situations where people attack us, where people get triggered by us when we put out an emotion. It's the fact that we don't do anything, that we don't add our flavor, what makes people very often uncomfortable. Our second function is connected to the archetypical energy of the parent function. So this is something that we do without wanting something in return. So we're being kind to others, we're being forgiving of others. But what we have to take into consideration is that there are different ways of parenting. And there's this concept that I saw in Personality Hackers talked about lately, which is, there are 3 kinds of parenting. You can protect, you can prepare, and you can promote. And as INFJs, we sometimes are rather more likely to protect people from the truth. And truth-telling has in many ways something to do with preparation, as in, if I really speak my truth, I'm going to create this harmony. Because people go through life thinking they can get away with certain things, or that they're doing things that are in their best interest. And we try to maintain that harmony when it isn't in everybody's best interest. Most of the time, it's not even in our own best interest. And what is actually going to allow a way more positive relationship to, manifest is when we really speak our truth. And when we let that person know the way you're behaving is, really not good for you. And it's not good for me. Like, I'm not going to accept that. So we can, with our second function, also create a feeling in others that is not positive. But that is actually a mature version of a parenting function. It's not just about making somebody feel good. It's also about doing the responsible thing. When people are acting in ways that are immoral, when people are acting in a way that aren't, fair, to, show them their consequences. And this is also important when it comes to parenting ourselves. And so that's why this function is so super important, because it's easier for us to say, okay, I'm going to do what's best for them from their perspective. But the price to pay for this is in many cases that we neglect what is best for us. And that's when we really have to learn that that second function isn't only there to parent others, it's also to parent ourselves. Meaning, when somebody does something that doesn't make us feel good, we set a boundary. How do we set a boundary? We set a boundary by creating a negative emotion. People have to feel that they've crossed a boundary, because every single one of us has a different boundary somewhere. Even us INFJs. And people have no ability to know when they've crossed a boundary of yours when you don't show it to them. This is also about setting boundaries of what you allow into your introverted intuition, believe it or not, because you decide whose emotions and whose energy you pick up in order to create patterns in your mind around it. And if somebody's acting in, let's say, a self-destructive way that has a negative impact on you, then it's on us and our parenting function to say, please let that be. So that's why we really have to learn our second function isn't a reactive function in itself. That's a basic form of extroverted feeling as a parent function. A much higher developed way for this function would be to also take charge and to set boundaries and to make it known through the language of emotions that this is not who we are, this is not what we're going to stand for, and this is not what we're going to allow. And believe it or not, it's actually through setting those boundaries that people, maybe for the first time, get to know you. People don't know who you are. We as INFJs feel lonely so often, and if we would just really make sure that we do that, we really give people the opportunity to love us. But it's a scary thing to do, because we have been conditioned, we have conditioned ourselves that being ourselves and setting those boundaries is going to trigger people. They're not going to like us. But remember, you rather want to be disliked for who you are than to be liked for who you're not. Because when you're being liked for the chameleon that you can play, for what you can do for other people, you're never ever going to feel really seen and connected. Like, it is all based on being as authentic with yourself and with others as much as you possibly can. Then we come to our third function. Our third function is introverted thinking. So this is all about a universal truth. This is a truth that is independent of what is considered right or wrong in society. This is all about a universal truth. So in many cases, we combine our first and third function, meaning we pick up patterns and then our thinking function makes sense of it. And our third function is something that gives us great insight. It is something that allows us to speak, harsh truths sometimes, to say uncomfortable truths, but truths nonetheless. And there's always this relationship between the second and third function as well as our first and fourth function. So in this example, it's the other side of the coin of, you have extroverted feeling and then you have introverted thinking, meaning when a person is portraying something, you understand them on the emotional levels that they're showing. And introverted thinking is all about understanding the truth behind it. Why are people acting this way? What's going on underneath? So it's, a combination of all of that, but that's what the third function is mostly used for. It's to make precise decisions. It's to make a precise understandings of situations independent of how we might feel about something, independent of how other people might feel about something. And it's a function that we over rely on very often, because in an ideal world, we would be able to make very precise decisions in any circumstance. But we are feelers. We are biased. We will take people's feelings into account. We cannot be completely cold and make those logical decisions. So if we allow all kinds of emotions to come into our sphere and we think we're going to be able to still make precise, rational decisions, we are just lying to ourselves. Because the less input you have from other people's emotions, other people's problems, and so on, the easier it's going to be for us to make those precise decisions, to make, precise assessments of situations. And that is what we have to understand about the third function. It is our eternal child function. So it's a function that we always want to go to. But again, our parent function has to be the one who says, I know you want to, but that's not your place. And the way this actually happens is that we don't allow everybody and their energy into our space and then think we can just, stand there and we can stay cold in that situation. Because believe it or not, we do allow way too much energy into our life very often when we haven't developed this. Meaning you have that uncle that is always negative at family gatherings, but you feel like, of course, I'm going to stay in that family gathering and I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to rock the boat. That's a situation where we over rely on our third function, on our eternal child function, because it's all about, I'm going to be able to look at the situation from a very cold perspective. I'm not going to allow this to affect me. I'm just going to stay calm. And it's just not the case. It does affect us. And so the way the parent function, so extroverted feeling, would come into play would be to say, you're not talking to me this way. It would be to say, you're either going to adapt or I'm just going to go and not be part of those, gatherings. Right? I always encourage you, please first speak your truth. Allow others to adapt to you before you just, vanish. Because very often this seems like the easier way of people are not going to get it anyway. They're not going to accept me. They're going to continue with what they're doing. So why even try? I'm just going to remove myself. But when you do this constantly and all the time, you're always going to miss out on situations that could have turned out a different way. You do have more power with your second function than you actually think, but we have to really stay on course. We have to make another person aware that every single time they try to put any negative energy on us, we're going to be a mirror. We're going to make them feel that. And we're able to do that. We're skilled at this. Make that person feel the pain that they're putting onto you. It's not on you to work through their emotions, particularly if those emotions aren't, positive. And you will see when a person understands, okay, you're never going to turn back into the version that you used to be. They cannot just, dump all this stuff on you because it was just easy and a great relief. That's just not going to be something that you allow. And people are actually forced to either work through those things or maybe find some other place to dump it, but they know they can't dump it on you because the pain they're going to feel in response isn't worth it. Right? So that's what the third function is all about. The more you lean into setting boundaries of who you allow into your world energetically, the better decisions and the better judgments you can do with your third function. And now let's get to our fourth function. So our fourth function is extroverted sensing. It's the function that we avoid very often. There's a lot of uncertainty connected with that. It's our inferior function, and very often we have an inferiority complex when it comes to this, meaning we try to project that onto others when we're younger, when we're not mature, because we feel like I cannot tackle this. This is really hard. And it's actually the function that's going to counteract our first function and, the superiority complex that we have there. Because what is our last function all about? Our last function is all about the here and now, the real world, the externally observable facts. So it is a perceiving function in general, as in this is what we're currently experiencing, and we're all experiencing this. I'm living in this apartment. I have that kind of job. I, talk to 3 or 4 friends, and, I like my job. I don't like my job, but it's real world stuff. This isn't an ideal version in our mind. This is what's really going on. And it has a lot to do with imperfection. And for most of us, we have this ideal image in our mind of how life could be, and the world and our life just doesn't measure up to it. So we stay in our mind and we think that's how we can go through life, but we can't. Not because, there's some right or wrong thing about it, not because it's immoral or anything like that. It's just we've tried, and I've never met an INFJ who's succeeded, because at the end of the day, we need connection with people and we need to feel progress in our life. And that is impossible unless we actually integrate our last function. So that's all about understanding that if we want to be complete and we want to create the life we always wanted to, we have to first accept what our life truly is. and, have this ideal version in our mind as maybe like a North Star, but to understand that this is not reality. It is not. It's where our reality could lean into. It's something that we can push towards that, but we don't have that much energy in our last function. This is going to be hard work. Stepping out into the real world and bringing our vision to life, meaning sharing our poetry, sharing our music, sharing our thoughts, sharing our complex ideas, going out and, sharing it with the world, making an impact. SE is also all about impact. So it is a perceiving function, but it's also about, I'm going to create something that's going to have an impact on other people. You can have amazing ideas in your mind. As long as it doesn't have an impact in the real world, you haven't tapped into your SE. And this integration was extremely difficult for me, but it was the best thing ever, because then I actually was able to create like this holistic version of myself that feels like, okay, I'm tapping into my potential, because there's a lot of grief connected with that, oh, life isn't my ideal version that I thought it's going to be. And I had to, grow up and understand, well, this is what reality currently really is for me. I might think I have all these great ideas. I might think that, I could achieve this and that, or I could experience life in such a wonderful way. But that is the truth. I don't like my job. I don't like the apartment that I live in. I don't like, my friends, my so-called friends. But it's also about being grateful for what you already have, meaning I'm so thankful I do have the job that I have that allows me to, experience life in so many beautiful ways. And through that integration of our last function, we can then start taking action towards our INFJ epic life. So it's really about combining all that to understand that we are our fourth function as well. We're not just this cerebral being and that can exist in our mind only. We also exist in the context of what is currently happening in our life. So I do live in this city. I do have, these things that are going on in my life that I want to tackle. And then through that to say, how can I grow from that? How can I lean into a life that is more in alignment with my purpose, that allows me to create inner peace and maintain that allows me to have continuous progress. And so it's a very exciting journey. It's a very exciting journey for me. I hope it's a very exciting journey for you. And that is my goal in all of it, to kind of guide you to look into the directions that are going to allow you to integrate all those parts of yours and to continuously feel like I'm tapping into my potential. I'm making myself more real. I'm having an impact. Life is not happening outside of me. I'm the one who's creating it. I'm the main character of my movie. I'm not living a supportive role in somebody else's movie. So that was an overview of the first four functions, or from an MBTI standpoint, all our functions. I really encourage you to write down in the comments if you want me to do the shadow functions. So this is going more into socionics and into John Beebe's work. But please let me know. I really want to try to stay more in communication with you. It is hard for me because I get easily overwhelmed, but I really want to connect with you. I want to understand you better. I want to serve you better. I want to help you more. So this could be a great opportunity. So please share in the comments if you want me to do the shadow functions, and you can like it or dislike it in order for me to know if there's interest in this. Remember, if you want to take some more steps in creating your INFJ epic life, then check out the free poster on the formula to an INFJ epic life. And if you want to take it a step further, then get the INFJ Epic Life audio guide. Everything you need to know you can find in the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in alignment with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.